In the first video in this series, we explored how Canada's identity was initially represented on film. We also explored how our connections with the American film industry complicated our ability to create a distinctly Canadian cinema. We discussed how some Canadian stereotypes, like the donut-eating, hockey-loving nice guy, are easy to spot, as they are found in many of our Canadian ads and shows. But as many filmmakers have discovered, representing more nuanced and authentic identities is much harder. In this video, we will delve deeper, exploring how Canadian cinema has tried to represent us. In Canada, provincial and federal tax incentives support the development and distribution of Canadian content, or CanCon. The government-funded CBC continues to inject money into CanCon and has recently expanded support from the creation of English and French language content to also include films by Indigenous peoples, minorities, women, and persons with disabilities. The Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunication Commission, or the CRTC, is also making it easier even for filmmakers with very limited resources to become eligible for the production of high-quality Canadian content. Telefilm Canada also supports emerging and established filmmakers by stimulating demand for and access to Canadian productions. These resources offer funding and flexibility for producers and support Canada's social, cultural, and economic systems. Since the development of Telefilm Canada in the late 1960s, English language, Quebecois, and Northern Indigenous Inuit cinemas began to emerge, reflecting distinctions between Eastern, Western, and Northern Canadian cinema. In this guide, we will begin to explore the qualities of these regional cinemas and some of the divisions that also exist among them.
The late 1950s and early 60s saw the rise of cinema in Quebec. After the relocation of the NFB office from Ottawa to Montreal, Quebec filmmakers and audiences saw the opportunities for popular and artistic innovation. Quebecois filmmakers innovated mobile, lighter-weight camera technology and on-location sound recording. As a result, a wide range of content was created. Quebecers also wanted their films to reflect their lives, politics, language, and culture, to allow Quebecois cinema to be distinct. In 1967, after the creation of the Canadian Film Development Corporation, now known as Telefilm, Quebec filmmakers pushed for a provincial film funding corporation to support their French language and culture. The result? The Institut Québécois du Cinéma, founded in 1975, which to this day remains a powerful funding outlet for Quebecois content. Although the 80s saw a production slump in Quebecois cinema, big hits such as Jesus of Montreal helped revive the industry. Since the 2000s, Quebecois cinema continues to be characterized not only by its diversity and its built-in French language star power, but also its prominent national and international presence. Quebecois cinema accounts for 18% of exposure on all Canadian screens. Filmmakers Denis Villeneuve and Jean-Marc Vallée, to name two notable examples, have also branched off into work in Hollywood. They've created some of that industry's most popular and acclaimed films, carving out a prominent international place for Quebecois directors. At the same time, young up-and-coming director Xavier Dolan has received international recognition at Cannes and elsewhere for his films. His work explores the explosive synergy of characters in raw, authentic, and powerful stories, typically using the star power of French-Canadian stars. Today, Quebecois cinema remains one of Canada's most distinct film industries, mainly because of its cultural French-Canadian language barrier from other Canadian provinces. Quebecois cinema is protected by the Quebec Language Protection Policy, a provincial initiative that preserves French language and Quebecois culture. This funding agenda offers an explanation for Quebec cinema's significant viewership and serves as a reminder of the positive impact of protectionist policies.
By contrast, Canadian English language cinema has always struggled to distinguish itself from British and American film It's worth exploring if and how English-language Canadian cinema begins to form its own unique identity. One of Canada's most well-known directors, David Cronenberg, began making his mark in the 1970s when tax policies offered funding to Canadian filmmakers trying to make Hollywood-style films. Cronenberg's provocative films took advantage of this funding to take greater risks than more mainstream works and explore the construction of identity through visceral body horror. Much of his earlier work, such as Scanners and Videodrome, uses the grotesque to represent fears of physical and sexual transformation. In the 1980s and early 90s, a small group of exciting new filmmakers emerged in the Canadian film scene, collectively forming the Toronto New Wave. The films of the Toronto New Wave were small, independent productions that rejected Hollywood narrative formulas. The films were also recognizably set in Toronto, rather than Toronto standing in for an American city. The films of the Toronto New Wave explored some of Canada's most essential themes, such as the search of identity and the feeling of detachment through alienation. Some of Canada's most recognized filmmakers made up the Toronto New Wave, including Patricia Rozema and Oscar nominee Adam Egoyan. Adam Egoyan is an Armenian-Canadian filmmaker whose large body of work explores relations of multiculturalism and the construction of identity through sexuality and technology. Both David Cronenberg and Adam Egoyan's films feature characters who face a sense of bodily displacement from their original roots. Northern Inuit cinema has emerged as one exciting regional cinema and is characterized by Indigenous voices expressing authentic stories about their cultural experience. While representations of the Arctic have been seen in both historical films and modern advertising, talented filmmakers such as Alethea Arnacook-Baril, director of the 2016 TIFF Canada Top 10 film Angry Inuk, continue to shape Northern Inuit cinema by producing work from an Indigenous perspective. One of Canada's most famous Indigenous Inuit filmmakers is Zacharias Canuck, whose film Atanarjuat the Fast Runner paved the way for continued success of Northern Inuit cinema. He became the first Canadian Indigenous filmmaker to receive recognition at the Cannes Film Festival, in part because of Atanarjuat's groundbreaking, authentic representation of Indigenous culture. The reconstruction of materials, shelters, and clothing, little known by the end of the 20th century, required the use of traditional materials such as bone, skin, stone, and caribou. The authentic visual identity of Atanarjuat was because of Canuck's complete commitment to the preservation of Inuit culture. If the immense success of Atanarjuat is any indication, alternative modes of storytelling can successfully exist in the mainstream marketplace.
Navigating Canada's diverse and distinct body of films is an exciting experience, one that offers audiences the opportunity to explore the lives and lands of our broad country. Our industries are supported to both protect and celebrate our independence from our American neighbors. Large funding bodies have supported the production of internationally renowned films and the development of talented, award-winning filmmakers. Preserving cultural authenticity in all aspects of film production is necessary for expressing our true Canadian identity. And of course, the Canadian experience can mean different things for different people. As Canadians, we have unique ideas and stories to share with each other and with the world.